Hello, this is Lee Bellinger with Off Grid Confidential in this edition of the Bellinger Report. And I have with me my wingman, Eric Kramer. And what? Yes. Well,
I
wingman.
told you I'm Goose and you're Maverick. We're the
Yeah,
next best thing to
that's right.
when we finally get the new
We're,
Top Gun movie to
yeah,
come.
we're a
Yeah,
pathetic excuse for
yeah,
that movie. It needs to come out soon, very soon.
yeah, yeah.
So, um, so that's great stuff. And so Eric, we got a lot to talk about this time around, and you want to start rolling with your questions, and we'll take it from there.
Yeah, well, let's do our winners and losers for the week or
Okay,
whatever.
I've
Let's
got
do
all
it.
losers this
Yeah.
week.
Yeah, who do you got? You got all losers, no
Well,
winners?
I'm doing a story in the Off Grid Confidential about cracks that are now appearing in the Biden administration, in the Harris
Okay.
Biden administration. I've been around in politics a long time. I worked for two members of Congress when I was very, very young, and started that way. And one of the things I've been monitoring on behalf of my readers is what are the cracks in the Biden administration? Where are their vulnerabilities starting to emerge? And there's been many of them. Thank God, because Eric, one thing that needs to be said before we get into the cracks in the Biden administration's armor is the totality of the defeat of pro-liberty America in November. Not only was an election taken from us, but 100 million people were banned from comparing notes on the internet. So we've had a massive defeat. And in that defeat, total control of the internet, total control of the political system, all two branches of Congress and the White House and the media and the triumph of big tech and the deep state. And now they're going after Giuliani as a way they're going to go after President Trump and his sons. And we basically are dealing with a magnitude of a setback in politics that is probably even larger than what happened in 1964 when Barry Goldwater got trounced. And of course, that ultimately led to President Reagan and the defeat of the Soviets. But I mean, that's a long way off. And so, we've been looking at a pretty rough road. So what I've been doing is looking at the cracks in the armor of the Biden administration. Where are the indications that the pushback is starting against this regime? And that's what I think of it as a regime. So one of the big enchiladas that I see is that Twitter, just to understand a little bit about stock drop, but Twitter recently dropped about 15% stocks, and the reason is the psychology of Twitter has been that they've been on a growth curve indefinitely. Like basically, they're used to an unending growth curve, but the reason their stocks are starting to suffer is because they're not gaining as many new members as they were. And that's because conservatives and Republicans and pro-liberty Americans are looking for other alternatives. And it's already affected this long trend of Twitter always coming out with better stock, better stock, better stock, better stock. But the attacks on President Trump and the deplatforming and the impact on the individuals, it's a big setback for them. It's the beginning. There's a really great story in the Epic Times by a fellow named Roger Simon. And it's the title is "Use Twitter's New Weakness to Start Upending Big Tech." And so I do recommend it. Is something it's in the Epoch Times, Twitter's New Weakness to Start Upending Big Tech. But that loss in the stock is good, and it's also, we'll talk about the woke capitalism setbacks, because woke capitalism is having some big setbacks, including in Georgia. So that's crack number two that I see, is that there's really I can't do justice to this subject better than the young guy that Kyle Smith of National Review, and the section called Politics and Policy, and he's got an awesome article about how the boycott Georgia movement flopped. And there are many reasons for this. The idiot the commissioner of the baseball, Major League Baseball commissioner, Bob Manfred, the way this article describes it, he poured gasoline all over himself and then lit the match because all the All-Star games are moving to other states. Well, the problem with that is that at least in 28 states, right?
Yeah.
They have laws that are equivalent to Georgia's election laws. So
Yeah.
all of a sudden, their team can't go to all these other states. How does that work? And so a lot of African Americans who were with MLB got replaced by a bunch of white people on the national level because the state had relinquished its position and in the MLB. So on top of that, so all these jobs are lost to the point that Stacey Abrams has turned herself around completely and said, "Oh no, these corporate boycotts against Georgia are putting Georgian voters out of work. We can't have that." So uh, they've had to do a complete reversal, and I think that you were pointing out that all the big corporations, Cola and all the rest, they got together to a big Zoom meeting, and the Zoom meeting bombed. And not only did they put out a weakened statement, but a lot of the original supporters of the woke movement against the Georgia laws to improve the voting process, the security of the voting process, all of a sudden they're all out. They're all out on the street. So and they had a weak statement, and a couple of the big corporations pulled out, and all the big woke executives they've all gone into some kind of a witness protection program. They're not even talking anymore.
Yeah, well,
So
I like
that's kind of
also.
cool.
Yeah, I like with Coke also. One of the things they got lambasted over wasn't just that, but was that diversity plan that they had, that they came out with. Their top lawyer went ahead and came up, designed a diversity plan to teach people about the evils of being white. But the good thing with that, what happened, along with them and Delta were two of the big instigators behind the Georgia debacle that you're referencing. But neither one of them signed the document. Like you said, they backed out at the last minute. But also with Coca-Cola, what happened to them is they've totally shut down their diversity plan, and on top of it, the lawyer resigned in shame. So it's same old get woke, go broke. I mean, what's
Get
happened
woke,
is
go broke.
enough of us have stood up and quit using Coke products. And same thing, I've listened to people on other talk shows talk about they did, there's so many different things that we need to fight against the corporate world, but you can't do them all. It's impossible, but you got to do what you can do. And yeah, I've even heard people talk about, hey, when it comes to Delta, if I can fly another airline, I do. That's as an example. Hey, one of the funny ones that I like is, I tell you before, I listen to Glenn Beck, but Glenn Beck's favorite thing in life, he said, his entire life has been drinking Coke. It's out of all of their offices. He doesn't do it anymore. And that's what you got to do. And you can't stop doing everything. So that's how we all play our part. We just got to kind of pick the thing that we can get, that we can boycott. I was listening to somebody yesterday talking about that's one of the biggest problems with us. They recently came out with a survey. Actually, I think this was Dan Bongino was talking about how they came out with a survey and basically showed the results of it were that liberals are in, Democrats are more political than we are. Because, and one of the problems is, one of the measurements they looked at was this whole idea of, most Republicans, most people on the right, we've never signed a petition. I can tell you, I've signed plenty of petitions. I can tell you another thing I do is I write my congressman, and I write my governor, and I'm getting ready to do that again. But they said that's one of the big differences between us. We've got to start writing petitions. Don't give up. Don't give up and say, well, it's all gone. We've lost. No, there's still people there pulling for us. Also, boycotting. We're not the people that boycott. We don't show up, but the left does. So that's some things we've got to start looking at doing. And part of it is, boycotting products from the
70% of Americans oppose politics and sports.
Oh,
We
yeah.
can build on that.
Oh,
and
absolutely.
I do agree. We white people have a lot of flaws, but we also invented the Constitution and the Bill of Rights, and the idea that it's not one election, one time, and all the and free speech and all the legal protections that white people invented all of that, all of
Well,
it. So
well,
it's but the other flaws I'm sure are real, and of course that's why a lot of African Americans and Hispanics have joined the liberty movement. And we've talked about those numbers that there's a whole hell of a lot of us that have this liberty movement. In fact, one of the scary things and I'm glad that President Trump is essentially going to lead the battle uh, of taking back the House of Representatives, because number one, it's going to be an easy victory. There's only 5 seats to be gained that have to be gained in order to take it back. And number two, you saw what happened down in Texas. This whole thing about Texas turning blue is just nonsense. President Trump intervened in a race, and they won unexpectedly when the Democrats were supposed to win it. And it was a and the guy who ran on bashing Trump for being bad got his butt kicked. He pulled 3% of the vote, and the rest of them, the two of them, the so it was a runoff race.
yeah,
So
it was that you're talking about that race. It's down. It's one of the seats down in Dallas,
yes,
where Trump actually won that one. It was close by
yeah, he
about
won by
three
3%, three
points,
percent.
and
That's right.
it's one that the left has been saying they're going to turn. Definitely, it's turning purple and it's going to go blue. And the interesting thing is, the runoff now is two Republicans. Of course, the one that Trump backed was actually I believe it was Congressman Wright who passed away. I think that's
Yes,
what his name was. But his wife is the one that Trump ended up backing. But her and one other Republican candidate, they moved on to the runoff. The Democrats only got 36% of the vote. That was it.
yes,
So
that's
they
it.
got trounced. I mean, it
They
was
got killed. They got killed.
64 to 36 in a
Yeah.
place that they have been turning, purple in their words. I've looked and I've heard, that they're saying, oh, this is a bellwether. But still, it's, when you look at
What
the cracks, that's the kind of thing they're saying. It
what
does not look good for them for the
and
2022 coming up.
what President Trump needs to do, I think, if he takes his airplane and does massive rallies in support of the Republicans taking the House back, that's going to be. And then I think that what he needs to do is eventually, sometime in the next 18 months, we have a massive 1 million person rally, maybe in a couple of farm belts around, the big headquarters out in Seattle of the big tech quarters, and do a massive people's rally. And I think that President Trump could do a big crescendo rally where we rail against the people who are censoring pro-liberty Americans and their pro-liberty causes in the United States. And if he does that, if he goes, that's going to do more than anything to keep these prosecutors off his back. If he wants to keep the prosecutors off his back, he's got to show that he can draw massive crowds, and he should be espousing a Gandhi-like message: no violence, and that we stay peaceful. Martin Luther King, to follow their template. It works. The bad guys are in charge, and they want to turn us into second class citizens, and they're doing so. And the pro liberty people are being turned into second class citizens. And quite frankly, we want to win people over by not being violent. And in fact, we should have security at our rallies so that we can't, like what happened in Charlottesville. You had a situation where Antifa attacked a legitimate rally and caused a bunch of violence, and it muddied everybody. And it made it much harder for President Trump to defend the situation. The fact is, these people did not have, they didn't have a permit, and they attacked the people who did have a permit for a peaceful rally, and so the public can't see the difference between a peaceful rally and an unpeaceful rally. So we have to, like, do what we need to do to uh, tell people, no, we're self-policing, and we clean up our messes, and we get out there. And I think that's the kind of that would be something that I would suggest for President Trump to adjust in his messages when he's out there.
Yeah.
Talk about how we're not Antifa. We are so not Antifa, and really bash them and say peaceful resistance to Antifa is really key. Let them be violent. Let them be violent. And that will bring him out, so
Yeah.
he should be doing the big rallies on behalf of the Republican Party candidates, and it'll be an easy victory for him. But more important, it's going to make the raise the price of these prosecutions against him, because in the end, people don't realize this, but the but prosecutors are generally elected. They're political animals, and we have to. He needs to show his command of the public and the pro liberty Americans. And if he does that, it's going to deter them. They're going to say this is not worth it to us to be prosecuting this man.
Yeah, another harbinger that goes along with that runoff down in Texas. I was reading another article where they said it's where it's really looking bad. This article said that they would not be surprised if they lost 70 seats in the House in the
Oh, I wouldn't know.
2022 election. But here's one of the things that's also happening in the background. That article lists 8 different seats that where in Congress where it's tough. It's a tough battle. It's one of those. I can't remember the name right now. I did the same thing last week, but it's where they it's a district that it's got a lot of competition for the Democrats and the Republicans. And what's happening is the people are actually they're already saying they're not going to run again in these contested districts. That's the word I was thinking of. And
Right.
what they're doing is they're going back into state government jobs. They're gonna run for state senate, or they're gonna try to run for governor or different things. And they're saying that's just gonna exacerbate the situation. I mean, this article listed 8 Democrats, and it's not just one. And when asked, one of the reasons why they're doing that is because they think they have a better chance to win in the state elections than they
Mm.
do in those contested districts. But also, the other thing is that some of them actually said they just don't agree with the direction of the Democratic Party. So it's not a good harbinger for the Democrats. And also, going back a few minutes ago with what you were talking about, I just want to I don't want to correct you, but maybe that's the right word, maybe scold you. We don't want to fall for the left lies. One of the things you talked about is, you brought about how, white people came up with the Constitution and all that.
They invented
That's,
it, yes.
yeah. See, we don't want to go into that because the Constitution didn't come from white people. It came from inalienable rights from God. And that's the thing they really don't want. They pick us to, I mean, we fall into their trap by getting into that the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, and these things are things that were created by man. No, because then if those were created by man, we don't have to follow them, and they're just a different group of men that are going to change it. What they really want to fight against is, I mean, the right to carry a gun doesn't come from a government. The right to protect your family, the right to work, the right to freedom, the right to, to your voice and freedom of speech. None of those things are come from the government. They come from God, and they hate that more than anything because
Yeah,
that's
of
what
course.
this is really a battle. I
No,
mean,
that's a correct thing. All I was saying was that all this bashing white people thing. I mean, give them a little credit. They, as far as
oh,
putting that together. Anyway, I agree with you there. And a lot of African Americans and more of them are going to follow the pro liberty movement, which is colorblind. It
absolutely.
should be. It should all be colorblind. And
Uh,
that's, by the way, and that's another thing. The Just on another crack is in the blue states. There's a big blowback against these putting these windmills up because they make a hell of a lot of noise. And now they're got, so all this infrastructure building is a big deal. By the way, just something else, another couple cracks I wanted to mention. So we kind of touched on this last time, but the two Democrat moderates in the Senate, both have come out against the District of Columbia becoming a new state. That's a big setback for them because that puts them at 48 votes at best. And I'm not sure they can get that many votes. I think they do more like 43 or 44 votes. So the district, so that's off the table, and packing the courts appears to be off the table. And really, we're still just looking at some version of HR1, which I think they're going to try really hard to get that done yet. But the fact is, the statehood for Puerto Rico fell apart because there were too many Hispanics that liked Trump in Puerto Rico, and so as you pointed out, Chuck Schumer dropped that like a hot rock. That idea, he'd been big on it, and then suddenly he was silent about it. And so we're starting to see some divisions. I do watch left wing groups that are police that worry about the Democrats selling out to the corporate left. There's a group called the Young Turks, and I subscribe to them, and I love their stuff because of it. They're the ones that are already saying, "Look, they're selling us out on this and this and this." And sometimes they're right, and sometimes they're not. But it looks like there's some slippage there.
Yeah, I was going to say too, when you talked about the two Democrats that are kind of like,
Mantin and
it's kind of like they got the finger in the dike there for us. Manchin and Simeon, Manchin, West Virginia, and Simeon from Arizona. One of the things when you're bored and you don't have anything to do, actually, I want to take the board off, and I'm going to take the if you don't have anything to do. What we need to do is write these people, tell them thank you, tell them that you support what they're doing. You don't, I mean, that you don't have to be in that district to do that. But we want to encourage people because this is a big deal, but even when these senators, they see the support that across the country that they'll get from this, then they know they're on, one of the greatest words or sayings by the Democrats is they'll know they're on the right side of history. So take your time to do that. And actually, I got a recommendation for you, Lee, because I know you had to bring Stacey Abrams up earlier because I know how much you like her, but I just saw that she's released her second romance novel, and I really, I think you need to order it.
At least Stacey Abrams has been pretty effective, and on a professional level, I do admire her accomplishments. But I certainly, while I empathize with her, I don't sympathize with her.
Did you read her
Um,
first book? Did you read her first book?
no, hell
Oh,
no,
okay.
no, hell no, no. But if you want to venture forth and no,
you know what?
I'm capable of not approving of somebody and still liking them.
Yeah, I'll order them on Amazon and send them to you. But both
I don't
copies.
like her that much. Just
Yeah, both copies.
no.
So, do you have any winners this week by any chance?
Well, the cause of liberty with these cracks, I think are pretty good. I wouldn't say, we don't really have. How about Kevin McCarthy because they're about to ditch Cheney in the House leadership because she persisted in keeping going on. They were willing to forgive her for her comments about impeaching Trump, but she continues with that process and won't shut up about it. And so it looks like they're about to kick her out. Of her leadership position, which is, I think, very appropriate.
Yeah, but you know what's ridiculous about that? Do you know the lady? They've already replaced her. Do you know her name? Do you know the lady's name that takes her place?
No, I don't know.
It slipped my mind. But I'll tell you, here's the part don't get all excited about that. Here's the reason. 3-4 weeks ago, all they did, the Republicans, is back her. They weren't going to do anything. Now, after they took the flack for 3 to 4 weeks, they go ahead and now they're going to boot her out. and replace her. The problem is the lady they replaced her with, and I've got my phone off so it won't ring, so I can't really, look it up real quick. But the lady who's taken her position is really no different. So the problem that we have is Republicans can't be trusted. I mean, the lady that they're replacing her with basically voted against everything that Trump ever wanted. I mean, on immigration, everything. She just
Yeah.
voted against them. So it's the same old game that they do all the time. They understand what we, the people, want, the people that put them in office, the people that voted for them. And what are they doing? Yes, it's not Liz Cheney, who's a neocon. This lady's not a neocon, but she's just as bad. And that's what the Republicans don't get yet. We don't want these people anymore. That is not who we want. We need populist people that are going to vote for the way we want them to do, because we're the ones that put them in office. That's actually their job. They just haven't realized it yet.
Not yet.
Yeah, not yet. So, okay. So
but bear in mind that our side has taken some pretty big hits lately, and it's understandable that we're still discombobulated.
Yeah.
But what we're seeing now are governing mistakes. Biden ran his mouth about the MLB in Georgia, and they've had to completely retreat on that. And they're not invincible, and they're losing their ability to do the more radical stuff in the House. And once we win the election, once we take the House back, then it's going to be much easier to cope with the administration.
Yeah.
So that's really huge. But the fact is, most of the big stuff has already been derailed. Now something could happen that could change that they could get, getting a lightning round in Congress and get the District of Columbia through. It's possible. Maybe something will happen. Maybe something will happen on the filibuster. It's possible. But for now, I think they've got some pretty big issues. And Biden is still enjoying a very high rate of a very high personal approval rating, but it's kind of a meaningless rating in terms of getting stuff done. Reagan had a very
but even his approval rating, the last one that I heard quoted was at 53%. Which at
yes,
the same time in office, Barack Obama was like 65%.
yes,
George Bush was 62%.
right.
Trump,
It was Gerald Ford had that kind of number,
yeah,
and Gerald Ford, because he pardoned Nixon and it killed him
yeah,
in the polls, and I think Gerald Ford was the guy that had the bad number this far into his presidency.
yeah,
Because he gave Nixon a pass.
yeah. So it's
and
pretty amazing that
he lost.
the most the savior of America, the president who received the most votes in history, has a 53% approval rating. And guess what? The woke news already knows, the CNNs and all of them. What are they already saying about it? Oh, 53 is the new 60.
Oh yes,
That's what they're calling it. So it's just a total disconnect from reality.
it
Yeah,
is.
don't fall for the lies that that everybody's all supporting this movement from the Democrats. They don't have a mandate of the people,
No.
and Biden is not a popular president. I mean, they're doing everything they can. I know I was looking at when you dissect those same poll numbers, his approval, or how they always look at like strongly approve, strongly disapprove within those numbers. His
Yeah.
strongly disapproved number is like 38%. His strongly approved number is only like 34%. So those numbers are not strong at all. You get when you dig down into it.
And then the other thing, Eric, is that you're already seeing, inflationary pressures. They haven't hit the CPI yet, but the lumber up 117%, and all of the supporting stuff, all of the hard assets are coming up.
I'll tell you, Lee, what
And
scared
it's
the crap out of me this week. You heard? Did you hear the Bank of America statement that they came out with?
no,
Okay, Bank of America actually, and this is when it starts to get scary because I know Lee, you're a good historian. You can explain hyperinflation in the Weimar Republic and things like that. But actually, Bank of America has just come out and they released that the last earnings reports that went out, the CEOs that talked about um, inflation was the highest number in the history of keeping up with it. So
Yeah.
the CEOs of companies are coming out and saying inflation. Bank of America now has come out and
Buffett
put,
too. Buffett too.
okay. But Bank of America came out and put an official statement out saying we are going in the not too distant future, we're going to enter a period of transitory hyperinflation.
Hmm.
You do not want to hear the H word because that's what destroys economies. That's what destroys our buying power. Hyperinflation is you go to bed on Sunday night and a loaf of bread costs you $3. You wake up on Monday morning, it costs you $5.
Well,
You
you
wake up
heard.
on Tuesday money, it costs you $8. You wake up the
Well,
following day. By the end of the week, it's $20
you,
for
you
the same $3 loaf of bread.
you saw Janet Yellen, Treasury Secretary, former Fed chair, had to retreat this last week, because she acknowledged that inflation was going to be an issue, and that they might have to raise interest rates to try to push that back. And of course, that freaked out the markets.
Oh,
So so they're and she doesn't make too many mistakes that way.
yeah, it's
So,
perfect timing to raise interest rates when we have $30 trillion in debt. Biden's proposing another $6 trillion of debt.
but they can't
Yeah,
do it.
perfect.
They can't do it because it's like all these, so trillions of dollars and all this money has to go somewhere, and it's going right now. It's going into assets and artificially inflating their value. Not to mention the fact that we're in a housing bubble for the same reason. And it's if you're selling your house, it's actually an awesome place to be. But otherwise, it's not so great. Um,
It's only an awesome place to be if you're downsizing because if you sell your house and then you go to buy another house, you're paying the same appreciation over there. I mean, you're just trading dollar for dollar almost.
that's right. That's right.
Yeah,
But
it's not like you don't get the benefit if you're trying to replace the existing house. You have to pay the same amount. You're just rolling the money over, and you might even pay more.
or if you're
But
moving into a house you already own, or a second house, but as you say, if you're downsizing, it might be in it. But I'm just
yeah,
saying, if you're selling your property, it's not the worst time
yeah.
if you're moving to a more modest abode. But like,
But the hyperinflation, and I know you're always talking about inflation. I've heard that word from you a lot.
mm,
But the hyperinflation really has me concerned, and I'm actually trying to figure out what do we do because of that. It's easy to say, oh, you go buy gold, buy cryptos, but the problem is most of us don't have a lot of money. It's not like you can just go buy gold and buy,
well, what you
buy
do
crypto.
is, what you do with gold and silver is you buy it slowly, and buy it as you can afford it, and you accumulate it slowly. You don't just go buy a bunch of it.
Yeah.
And you know and so dollar denominated assets are definitely, they have a problem, and I definitely think that crypto is in a bubble, uh, even though it could go much, 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 much higher. But the problem with crypto is that people have a modicum of financial privacy, and that it's a currency that actually appreciates in value, and that's going to make it a really big target of the federal government. They want to keep the dollar. They don't want people putting their money into things where that like crypto, where the value of their purchasing power goes up. If you buy crypto, your purchasing power goes up. If you're in the regular dollar, just the paper dollars, it doesn't go up. It's a depreciating asset, and that's the big difference between cryptocurrency and I got. So when this bubble pops with crypto, they're going to take it over. They'll commit, just like in the 2008 2009 crash. They made the banks vassals of the financial enforcement arm of the federal government, And I think that crypto is definitely high on the government's list because they don't want people escaping to appreciating currencies or currency units. And I think that's so, I love cryptocurrency. People say, "Oh, Lee, you're against technology." I said, "Hell no, I'm not. I love crypto. It's just that it's a big target,
Yeah.
and they haven't quite figured out how to corrupt it yet, but they will."
I don't know if you heard this. I was reading this the other day, and I can't remember the states, but there's 12 states now that are going to no longer uh, they remove capital gains on gold sales. 12 states have done that now. It's interesting. You start, what kind of states are they? Red states. So you start peeling that back. I think a lot of people are starting to understand what we could be possibly facing as far as our currency. And to me, that's just another sign that the states are preparing to say, hey, if the federal government gets too far out of control, we'll go ahead and, have our own currencies. We'll allow gold
Would you do
and
me a
everything else.
favor? You got a story on that somewhere? Can you shoot that story to me?
I'll have to find it. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, that would be great. I'm embarrassed that I missed that.
Oh, well, that's okay. I'll look it.
I mean, and I'm
I'll
even
have
more
to dig it
embarrassed
down.
that you came up with it and I didn't know about it. That's even
Yeah. Well,
worse.
every once in a while, blind hog finds an acorn. You know how that goes.
A blind dog finds
Blind
an
hog
acorn.
finds an acorn every now and then.
Oh my,
You ever heard
that's
that?
I love that hokey saying. No,
I
I
live
have
in
never
South
heard that either.
Carolina. What do you expect, man? I'm a country boy.
I'll say,
Yeah.
wow.
Yeah. What else did I have? I was gonna say something else, but I don't remember what it is. Hold on. Oh, talking about the hyperinflation. Of course, like what Lee points out all the time, you've got Lee, you've got his positions on cryptos. But for those of us that don't have a lot of money, what do we do? One of the things you can do is start, just like with this scenario I gave you, what something costs today could be extremely more expensive later. So
That's right.
one of the things you don't want to do is get caught with all kind of cash or whatever else. So as you can, one of the good things to do, go through the things you use, not trying to start a toilet paper run or anything, but especially since they're claiming transitory inflation, which means they're saying, it's going to be short term, not transitory inflation, transitory hyperinflation, meaning we're going to have really high levels of, exponential type levels of inflation for a short period of time. And they're trying to say it's directly caused by COVID. But, once you let inflation out of the bag, especially hyperinflation, it ain't too easy to put the
Jimmy
genie back.
Jimmy Carter was telling people that tax cuts were the cause of inflation when
Yeah.
he ran, and
Yeah.
Reagan. And I remember that he was like going, they're going to blame everything on COVID, sure.
Oh, yeah. So
Well,
one of
the
the things
economy is heating up because everybody's going back to work. Yeah. Uh, so that's the COVID excuse yet again.
Yeah. But one of the things you can do is don't tell anybody, but start putting some stuff back. I mean,
Well,
if you use mouthwash, and say for instance, Listerine bottle of that, big bottles cost like $7 or something like
well,
that.
that's the thing, Eric. It's like food is going up probably more like 10% a year.
Oh yeah.
So if you get the dried beans that last for 25 years, and you make a 10%, and it makes a 10% gain in value, it's not a taxable event either. So it's a tax-free event to stock up on the things that you're actually going to use,
Yep.
like you say, toilet paper and some of these other. Uh, if you if you choose to do that with frozen foods, you have to be very careful. You have to take into account the cost of the electricity and you have to rotate your food. You
Yeah.
have to have a system of food rotation. So if you're going to go to Costco or BJ's or whatever you go to, and if your food's going to get freezer, you're going to lose all your food if you don't have a rotation system that you
Yeah.
trust. And so
Yeah.
that's another big thing. But But if food's going up, I think it's like already at 10%, because they don't take into account the package shrinkage. It's not measured. You
Right.
know how they're increasing they decrease the amount of the actual food in there, and they increase the size of the packaging, and so
Yeah.
shrinkflation is what it's called.
Shrinkflation. Good name.
Shrinkflation, yeah. If you're buying food in quantity, and that's another thing you can do, you can buy from there's restaurant stores, and so if you've got a friend who's got a restaurant, and you can buy food that way. If you get these inexpensive freezers, um, get a good solar generator to run the freezers during, at least half the time, to reduce your electricity costs, and have a rotation on food system. But if you've got foods that you can, like, the beans and some of these other things, the staple foods, that stuff lasts forever. And
Yeah.
you can, and 10% gain after 30, even after 3 years, and you start using it, that's a pretty big gain for stuff
Yeah.
that you're going to use
And,
anyway.
for those of us that have a little bit of money, think of during times of hyperinflation, or or extreme inflation, the people that don't have money, the problem there is they can't afford the prices as they go up. So one of the things that's nice is then you're also prepared for a barter situation. Go ahead and stock up on a
Cigarettes and
year's worth of
cigarettes and booze.
alcohol,
Get
coffee. Um,
coffee's definitely going to go. Oh, coffee's going to go way up.
Oh yeah, all those kind of things. Tea, things like that. That people use and that can last. I bring up, Listerine, women and hygiene products, all type of things like that. So stock up. If you're fortunate to have the space, where you can do it.
Mhm.
And those aren't things that you have to worry about as much
Now
about rotating and
let's
everything like
let's
that.
talk about precious metals for a minute. Um, if you go to these strip mall, don't go to these places that take, that swap cosmetic jewelry and all that. But if you go to real coin shops, they tend to be in strip malls. And if they're near an affluent area, that's a good place to go. And you start buying, go in there every week and build a relationship with the owner of the shop, and buy in small quantities, and just, buy silver pieces, um, buy, but try to buy them in small increments so you can trade, and just do it over a period of time. And then they'll stop reporting you. You can do it with cash, and you can start very small, just, even if it's just $100 a month, and get these coins and stuff. Just make sure they're 0.999 silver. You can get silver eagles. You can get, and that type of stuff. Ammo is also something good to stock up on, if you've got friends. And there's a lot of things you can do, that'll help you. So those are all things you can think about. And remember too that gold and silver, are good in any currency, foreign or otherwise. So that's nice.
Yeah, and another thing too, for instance, we've talked about this, I think last week, how wood prices have gone crazy. So
Yeah.
also another thing to consider, if you're sitting around waiting for wood to come down to do that project, go ahead and do things you need to do now while they're cheaper. I mean, because now that the people are saying the H word, hyperinflation, that same piece of wood that's $56 now, um, it might go to $100. But what's probably not going to happen in the short term, it's not going to go back to 20 like it was. I mean, because they are declaring that we're going to enter this period. So if you've got projects you've been delaying around the house, hey, one of the interesting things I was reading, used cars as an example. That's a great thing. Used cars over the last year have gone up. I think it was almost 4 times in value for what um, the stock market has gone up. I mean, And that's inflation. Of course,
Well,
the
that's why all
media
the
is,
catalytic converters are being stolen.
yeah, and the media,
That's the thing.
yeah.
That's the warning sign right there. You know inflation's coming when that
Oh
happens.
yeah, and the media is trying to downplay it. Here's what
Oh
what
yes.
they're not doing is pointing out the rising price of used cars. Here's what they're saying. Oh well, that's a good thing, and you're like, why is that a good thing? A lot of people, all they can ever buy is used cars. They're saying, oh well, now the car prices are going up on used cars. They can trade those in and get new cars. Well, the prices are going up on those too. You know, but so it's just really think about it. It's made me think, and I'll give you an example. Me and my wife are going to do, just as an example. We bought a house in November. It's 17 years old. It's got 2 water heaters in it. One of them was replaced 3 years ago. The other one is from the original date the house was built, from 2004. Normally, under normal circumstances, you're like, hey, man, 17 years out of that water heater, you're only supposed to get 10. Keep going. I'm going to replace it. You know why? I don't want it to break 9 months from now, because the one thing that you can bet, the prices are going to be more 9 months from now, both for labor and materials,
Yeah.
than they are now. So I'm not going to wait for a break, not within the next 9 months, or risk my water heater, because when they break, they end up leaking, and maybe
Oh yeah.
that
When they
causes some
break,
damage.
it's never at a
Yeah,
good time.
right. I'm going to replace it now, and it still works. Another thing, I just had to replace an HVAC unit, which I hated because I bought this house in November, had 2 of them. The one I had to replace, the other one, same thing. I'm going to go ahead and replace it because it's going to be cheaper for me to do it now than it is later. So just some things to keep, to think about, trying to give people some practical advice. But I do have, if I can end with, and you can throw
Yeah,
in
because
what
we're running out of time, Eric. So
I
you got to
know.
make it. Got to make it
Winner,
good.
winner again. We the people. Here's a big win. Did you hear about the federal judge that ruled against the CDC? Saying,
I
giving
did.
landlords the authority to stop throwing out their tenants, and not paying their rent. Well, that's a huge win.
Yes.
We're starting to see. You talk about the crack in the armor with the Democrats and Biden and the administration. We're seeing the crack in the armor about COVID. One of the reasons that's a huge win, always got to bring up Florida because they're leading the way. They're like, it's like they're another country within the United States with what they're doing down there. But Florida is also in the process of suing the federal government and the CDC over closing the cruise lines. So this is pretty much a harbinger, a slam dunk. That's not going to get approved when they don't even approve. The federal judges haven't approved the landlords. So that's pretty awesome. And also, what's a bad deal about that? Good deal, but bad deal for the North is it's disastrous, because what's going to happen? There's going to be literally millions of people that are going to get tossed out of their houses. The federal government is not going to replace this,
But
or
by the way,
stop.
that's also driving the housing. That's driving the housing bubble because the housing market is effectively frozen.
Right. Yeah.
In
Good point.
effect, it's effectively national rent control is what it's boiled down to. So this judgment is very important. This is pretty much all the time we've got. We've covered a lot of ground. What a great conversation this time. And Eric, let's keep at it. We covered a lot of important issues and a lot of practical items as well. So well done.
Well, well, that's one of the things I think people that, and Lee, you've been in the business for a long time, and I think where you're different, which is a really positive difference in most of the talking heads for the conservative movement. Um, the people I listen to, what you're seeing, and the complaint that we've had from people on our side, even God bless his soul, Rush Limbaugh. We're tired of people just telling us what's going on, and that it's gloom and doom and all the, give us practical advice. You've been doing that in your letter, in your newsletter. That's what you do. You're kind of saying, hey, here's something that's going on. It's not good. Here's some advice on what you can do to make it better. But that's not what's been happening. We've got all these people that have made all this money. We're paying all this money to listen to people on talk shows, and we're reading their books. And most of the time, all they're doing is just telling us, hey, gloom and doom, the world's coming to an end. People now are wanting to hear what can we do? And I'm seeing that play out
And
with
lots of little
a
things
lot of the
happening.
people.
And that's right, and that's the whole beauty of them shutting down the internet, because I think you're starting to see cross percolation. And that's the I mean, in the end, with given the epic defeat that pro liberty forces have endured in the last year, we got to start over. And at first, it doesn't look like much, but I think that out of the ashes of this defeat, we're going to have a much stronger internet. We're going to have more decisively, we're going to have a pro liberty imprint on how corporations think going forward. And frankly, we're the majority anyway, so we just need to start acting like it. And we now have a message that African Americans and Hispanics can rally behind, and more of them will. They want pro freedom too. And and the machine politics of the cities are starting to fall apart because people are leaving in droves. And those are and our states are getting stronger and better, and it's going to draw more people, and it's going to be, and the next census that happens is going to be very dramatic in how big. I mean, you're going to see physical relocation in this country in big numbers. So it's all good news. It's just, you have to know to look for it. You have to know to look for it, and you have to learn to participate in it.
Yes, and if you're in the pro liberty movement, leave the blue states. I mean,
Leave
head
the
to
blue
Florida. Yeah.
states.
DeSantis just did a speech today. He announced they're going to have a $10 billion surplus. One,
And
because they stayed open. Two, because people are flocking there like crazy.
yep.
Put it in perspective. And I even heard him say, I think I heard him say, I believe it was him, and maybe somewhere I read, but I'm not going to give DeSantis because he might not have said this. But like, you put that in perspective, a state like Indiana, not to belittle it, you know what their budget is? $2.5 billion.
Mm,
I mean, guess what? The surplus for Florida is going to be $10 billion. The
yeah.
surplus,
Oh yeah.
not the budget. So, there's positive news, but, one of the best things you can do is get out of these blue states. Do not let them have your tax money. Do not spend money in those states, because all you're doing is supporting their agenda.
And the best part is that the more people leave those states, the higher the tax rates end up going, and it's going to. And now they're in on a road with no turns.
Oh,
Uh,
yeah, you're right. Well, even like, last thing I'll say, I know we got to go. It's kind of like the same thing with the landlords in the North. The problem is when all these people have to, in September, when the government money goes away and people are going to lose their homes, they need to get jobs. There's no jobs up there. You know why? The businesses have closed. And here's the last thing I'll end with, and it's even bigger than that. Businesses can't afford to reopen because of the insurance that they're going to have to pay because of all the BLM peaceful protests. So it's going to be bad news for these northern states that stayed closed, and they've allowed all the peaceful protests that caused all the destruction to their inner cities and the businesses that left and have no ambition to reopen just because of the insurance costs.
Absolutely,
Huge,
and that
huge.
certainly was big in DC as well. So,
Yeah.
Eric, we have
All
done
right.
great. Congratulations, well done. We'll be back at it next week.
Sounds wonderful, man. Looking forward to it. Y'all be safe.